Well, happening now, the latest on the first American journalist expelled from Russia since the Cold War. The name of that journalist is David Satter. He's lived and worked in Russia on and off throughout his 40-plus-year career. And he's written 3 books on Russia, as well as testified before Congress on Russia-U.S. policy and issues. David most recently was working in Moscow as an advisor for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. It's one of the few independent news agencies operating in Russia at this time. It's funded in part by the U.S. government. He's openly criticized the Russian government and Vladimir Putin in the past. That's not new. What is new is this. Several weeks ago, as David went through the often routine motions of renewing his visa, the Russian authorities told him his presence in the country was undesirable and would not allow him to return to his apartment in Moscow. While his personal belongings and work remain very much in Russia, David Lee is currently in London, where he joins us now. And it's great to have you on the program, David. I want to start with the big issue just to get it out of the way. Russia says this visa issue is an issue of your own making, that you brought this on yourself. What's your response to that?
Well, they know that's not true. In fact, they gave the real reason for the expulsion in Kyiv, where a Russian diplomat in their embassy in Kyiv told me that the competent organs, which is the term that's used for the FSB, that's the security police, have decided that your presence on the territory of the Russian Federation is undesirable and you're barred from entering Russia. Now, that was the real reason. Now, then there were 3 weeks in which they wouldn't give any reason, and they told the American embassy that, in fact, according to Russian law, no reason is given in the case of visa refusals. A couple of hours after they made that statement for the last time, they put up a reason on the Foreign Ministry website, but it was a false reason, which is all of this talk about visa infractions. It was an incident that they created and, in fact, had no significance whatsoever. And they're using that as a smokescreen to try to conceal what they've really done, which is exclude someone because of their writing and reporting. David, why now do you think that's happening to you after 40 years of traveling and working in Russia? Well, for one thing, I've had problems in the past. There was an attempt to expel me in 1979. There were visa denials in 1988 and 1990. And some fairly serious confrontations with the Russian authorities over my access to the country. So it's not completely unusual, but what's going on right now is obviously an attempt on the part of the Russian authorities to suppress anybody who they think inside of Russia or outside of Russia may be a threat to their power. For whatever reason, they've decided that I fit in that category. What do you make of the timing? And it's ironic to talk to you about this today. Here we had a huge speech from the president on the NSA issues in our country. Edward Snowden, who's responsible for those leaks, is now safely, we'll see in air quotes, residing in Russia at this time. And you're not allowed in the country. So what do you make of the timing, considering all of that, as well as it just being several weeks ahead of the Olympic Games when you're going to have thousands of journalists flocking to Russia? Well, it's clear that expelling me was a very high priority. If it hadn't been, they would have waited until after the Olympics. As far as Edward Snowden is concerned, when I was in Moscow, I was actually anxious to find him. And he was nowhere to be seen. I mean, as he explained in an interview with the Washington Post, he likes to be indoors. I guess after 30 days in the transit lounge in Sheremetyevo Airport, a person needs to spend another 4 or 5 months indoors. But in any case, you know, if he was so interested in digging up evidence of abuse by secret services, I would have been happy to suggested some paths of investigation concerning the Russian secret services. Fortunately, he was inaccessible. But well, let me ask you this, David. The point is, let me ask you this. Vladimir Putin is granting an interview to ABC News, much sought after interview ahead of the Olympics. If you have one message to send to Vladimir Putin, what would it be? Well, I mean, considering that we're talking about the Olympics, my message to Vladimir Putin would be based on the way in which the Russians have acted in previous hostage situations. I would say, Vladimir Putin, if there's a hostage-taking situation, you are the one who insisted on Sochi as the site of the Olympics. You are the one who's responsible for bringing visitors and sportsmen to a war zone. If any hostages are taken in a terrorist incident, your first obligation is to protect the lives of the hostages and not to open fire indiscriminately as you've done in the previous occasions, in effect massacring the hostages. That's what I would tell him, and I would make sure that he got the message.
That is a claim that you've had and you've written about in a few other situations that have come up over the years. I'd love to have you back to talk about that in the future, but let me ask you this, David, before we have to say goodbye. What would you say to Vladimir Putin about your issue and about getting kicked out of the country?
Well, you love to use the Western press. You love to use Western freedoms. You love to. You're the head of a regime whose members have their property and their bank accounts in the West. But it can't. It has to work both ways. If you want to take advantage of Western freedoms, you have to respect them in Russia itself.
Are we doing enough, David? I know the embassy is involved trying to help you get back in the country. We've also talked about this Russian reset that has been a nature of policy that the Obama administration has raised over the last several years. How do you feel that you're being helped by your own government? Are you being helped enough?
Well, time will tell. I think that the embassy is making an effort. The ambassador has filed a protest, and I believe he's pursuing this as vigorously. I think it's also very important for American society, for the Congress, for the press, to recognize that this is a fundamental issue of free speech, and it affects not just us, it affects the Russian people as well, and it affects our foreign interests, our public diplomacy, and we should take it seriously.
Well, we certainly are on this show, David. It's great to have you on our program. We look forward to having you back, and we'll continue to follow your story and what happens next. Thank you so much for the time this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.